I think we will start, and I think you've got a little sense of what we're trying to accomplish here. And this again was inspired by the fact that these marvelous people, two of which, as soon as Giuseppe is going to be here, the proprietors of the galleries, decided to come to Paso Robles. That's a great honor, and to produce these fantastic galleries. And the other interesting thing is that in this town, and we have several people up here that can qualify that, we have some people that have fantastic, long-standing credentials. This man here, Brent Keys, he gave me his bio. Like, there's no way I'm going to do his bio. Like, how do you do a bio when you have 500 credits? You know? So
you have to stay alive long enough.
Yeah, you have mentioned that. He's a teacher, a wonderful actor. He's been co-starred in some incredible series, and a great filmmaker, a great wine lover. That's why you're up here. All these people are great wine lovers.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so what we're going to attempt to do is to draw upon the parallelism of, in this case, of art, what art is, what painting is, and we're leaving wine out, we already did that, and the film form. And I'm reminded, because we're here in what can be considered a dialogue. We're having a dialogue, which is missing in our culture, because our culture now is we go to places like universities, or if we're lucky, or we go to the TV set and people tell us how to think and what to think. The whole idea of the dialogue is missing. And that's what this is. And I can tell you how important the dialogue is, because just recently I was thinking about the golden age of Greece, because if you're an artist, that's kind of where everything begins. And if you're in the film business and you write scripts, that's where it all begins. They invented it all. If you're a mathematician, that's where it all begins. If you're an architect, if you're an artist, if you're a sculptor, that's where it all began, in this place called Athens. And what was remarkable about Athens is this whole golden age only lasted about 30 years. And I have a roster, I happen to get this off the internet, of the people. You cannot believe the people they produced in that amount of time. I had it here, somewhere I have it. Aeschylus, who basically was the first playwright, and we don't do much different. And we have people like Democritus. You heard of the word democracy? You know, that's kind of, he began that idea. But also, he invented the theory of atoms. He's the one that saw the universe in terms of the smallest molecule. It all happened there. And what's important about it, that at their height, the entire population where all these geniuses came from was half the population of San Luis Obispo. And most of the time, the population was a third of Paso Robles. And what do they have there that could create these incredible geniuses?
No pressure.
The first thing they had is a park like we have. They called it the Agora. And in the park, you'd come across one day, you'd see Plato and Socrates. And they'd be having a discussion like we're having. And what I learned through life about the golden age of Athens is why, and there are these great times in culture that have produced these magnificent people, but there has always kind of been a reason for it. And we could be in New Athens. We have the population. But Pericles was the guy who made the decision. What did he do to bring up? He started with the arts. He supported the arts. And so while, by the way, they were inventing everything there was, they were building the Parthenon, by the way. That was just one of their little deals they were doing like that. Across the park, there was the Parthenon. And Praxiteles, maybe the greatest sculptor ever lived, started the Elgin marbles. You all know about the Elgin marbles. You know, they go on forever. You can't even believe anybody could produce these things way back when. So there's nothing really, if you think about it, different from, by the way, that was 2,500 years ago. You think we'd have learned something. But yes, it starts with the arts. Science, medicine, everything starts with the arts. That's with the beginning of culture. And at a time, and that's what inspires me, that we have decided as a community, as a country, to diminish the arts, take them out of the schools, and find them irrelevant, we have got to worship the fact that we have these wonderful people, two of which are on the panel here, who have decided to come in here into our midst and bring us this culture that we can enjoy. And we should revere it, we should support it, and you should save your money and buy their art, right?
Amen.
Huh? How can I say it again? Say it again.
This
I'm
girl
gonna
needs
save
to
my
live
money
here.
too. I have a lot of art around. I don't need it, okay? But I want to play some art too. Anyway, so today the subject is, and I think it can be an interesting subject. The subject is the motion picture, and it's a provocative subject because we're all going to have our attitudes. Will it ever be an art form? And the important part of that is inherent in that proposition is you got to decide what an art form is to begin with. So we got to understand that, and then we've got to imagine this thing that we have all these theaters, we have all this huge industry. Yeah, that's one of the clues, by the way, that it may not be an art form because you always call it the industry, right? You work in the industry. You notice that when you're an artist, you never refer to yourself working in an industry. You'll never do that. Now, why it's good to be in a gallery? Because there's no question that the people that produce all this work on this wall and next door are artists. In fact, the statement's synonymous. We're not like a ballet dancer and then we call ourselves an artist, but we really dance ballet. An artist is an artist. I've always called myself an artist. Everybody understands. Well, you paint in oils. It's sort of synonymous. So we're starting from a point in a gallery, and we've defined art and artists, and we can take those principles, if we understand them, and now apply them to the motion picture. And we have two authorities, right?
Authorities? I don't know about
Well,
that.
that's what you told me.
Okay.
Don't believe everything you read.
Oh, yeah, okay. Already. Okay, we already got it wrong. And then we have two authorities on art right here. So I think between us all, we may begin this dialogue. This dialogue, believe me, will never end, okay?
I know. It
Plato's
will.
dialogues work today, and they're as important today as they were in 430 BC. Just think about that when those two men sat down. And by the way, Aristotle came later. He was also a great winemaker, Aristotle. We forget about that part. They made great wine in that time. So they had great art, great science. You know, they discovered medicine. You know, when you take the Hippocratic Oath, what is that? That's Hippocrates. He was there then at that time too. I mean, I don't know if there was anything these guys didn't think of from scratch. And we still refer, like you go to their books. They invented math. They invented everything. So we have to think about that. We have to think about that. That's just not necessarily an anomaly, because there are other times, like in Venice, 1700s, when Vivaldi was there, there was a town, again, half the size of San Luis Obispo, where at any given time during the week you'd walk down the street and there are 20 to 25 incredible operas going on all at once. Imagine walking down Paso, Robles, 25 operas. So there's something magnificent about that. And great science, and all of that follows art. Just remember that. It is, if you want to go all through history, it follows art. Art begins it all. Even if you want to analyze music, music is math. Greatest musicians are mathematicians. They follow, they're integrated. And you think we have decided, well, we're going to try to produce all these great scientists. I'm sorry. You've got to have the artist first. You've got to have the art first. All right? So that's kind of my angst getting that part out. So anyway, why don't you give us your feeling about the motion picture. This is
Okay.
Brent, by the way, if you want to give a few of your credits.
Okay.
He starred in 4,000 TV shows.
That's right, and nobody knows my name. Isn't that interesting?
This is Brent's credits here.
That's right.
I mean, where do we begin? We begin with Boston Legal co-star. You know, privilege. The guy goes on forever. And he's a teacher,
Yeah.
and a fantastic teacher, a filmmaker, and a wine lover. That's why he
Wine
now
lover.
lives here. You know, we're all very lucky. He loves wine.
Yep.
And we're going to do a little show called, aren't we?
Yeah.
Are we
Yeah.
serious?
No, truly.
Because
Truly,
I think he
yeah.
looks a lot like Thomas Jefferson. and I want to do it.
Got the same hairline.
A little TV show, same, yeah.
Those
Thomas
with the eyebrows.
Jefferson interviews the winemakers.
I love it.
And this guy's
I
a
love
comedian too, by the way, so we could get
That's right.
Thomas Jefferson and all these winemakers,
Good,
you know,
it's
kind of
good.
asking these basic questions.
Perfect.
All right, so go ahead.
Okay, well, I went to the famous USC Film School, and so that's, oh, good, okay, SC. That's right. And so I'm going to come to you with a prejudiced point of view that film has always been art. It's a collaborative art. It's interesting, though, because it's a dichotomy of art and business. And, you know, when you see the MGM logo with the lion, and it's got some Latin written under that, you know what that says? Ars gratia artis. You know what that means in Latin? Art for art's sake.
Oh.
The last thing in the world MGM was about.
That's for sure.
Not even close. They were all about profit.
They were
There was
all
one
about
time,
the
I think in 1938, Hollywood in general made 364 movies, one short of essentially a movie a day, with all the studios. That wasn't just MGM. But being a collaborative medium, even the earliest films like Edwin S. Porter, 1903, The Great Train Robbery, which was it was a collaborative medium. It was the art of narrative storytelling, the art of the interpretive art of an actor to do what the story wanted, editing, directing, photography. All these art forms came together in one thing. And what was the purpose? To sell prints. That's how they made their money. They sold the prints. And to this day, that is still how it works. But one exciting thing, this is the really exciting thing. About 15 years ago, something happened. And before that, it cost a lot of money to make a film. It probably around $100,000 a day to make a movie.
Right.
And sometimes even more.
I think you're going to get ahead of ourselves. Save this last
Okay,
thought
okay.
for to the end.
Okay.
That's the roundup.
But 20 years ago, 15 years ago, the means to production was attainable by the average person. You didn't have to have a huge corporation. You didn't have to have an incredible track record where people would think that that water would part when you walked across it. And because the means of production now is available for $1,000 and maybe $300 worth of software on your computer,
you're getting ahead of
you
us.
can do it.
You're going to get ahead.
Okay, but
Yeah, that's all right.
so the big question is, can art, yes, it is an art. I believe it truly is an art. It always has been an art. The big question is, can you sustain a living?
Well, that's
That's
always
not
the question of all
the
art.
question, is it a fine art, right?
You know, that's a good point. Madeline, I'm going to introduce you to one, but I want to
Yeah.
throw one quick wrinkle in here, you know, for us to think about, because we're all taking different points of view here. In order to be an art form, you've got to decide where you're at. For instance, none of us will ever argue that this is a visual medium. It's not a music medium. You know, and if we go to a symphony over here, we know that it's all about listening. So the first thing in an art form, you have to decide what you are. And as far as I'm concerned, the motion picture has never decided what it is. Is it a visual form, or is it a storytelling form? In other words, is it literature, or just film play, or is it a visual form? That's what we'll get into that a little bit heavier later. But let me introduce right now Kathy Kelly. And by the way, everybody here is local. Isn't this amazing to have these great minds? Socrates? No, okay.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
quite. Okay, but almost.
I'm blushing.
No, these are our neighbors right here, and that's why I thought it would be great to know that we have some basis of having some intellectual power in our area. Anyway, Kathy is like Brent. There is no way, Kathy, I'm going to give all of your credits, okay?
No, you don't.
Please, I have pages of credits. But Kathy has been producing for what, about 125 years? Has that been?
I know, it's the
Oh, is it
hair
25
color,
years?
the hair
Oh,
color
the
work.
I slipped. Yeah. And you can mention just a little bit what you do, because I think it'll be very interesting. Most people don't realize that actually people do that.
It's true. That is very true. I actually, I'm a producer, and producing
commercials, infomercials, yes, money-making ventures, shows, TV shows, events, all sorts of that type of stuff. But yes, it's been about, I'll say 25.
Yeah, and she produces, again, she's a great wine person, and they produce the music, winery.
Winery Music
wonderful
Awards,
events,
I
so
did here, yeah.
That's a great,
And on TV this week.
This week I have a show that will be airing next Thursday that is a documentary that will be airing on Discovery. We just did an event we shot here in Paso, actually, at Robles Winery. The show is about Mille Miglia, which is a 1,000-mile road race that's been happening in Italy for 84 years.
since the Romans.
Not quite, but the company I'm now doing some work for out of Santa Barbara got the license to do this road race here in the U.S., and it went from Santa Barbara all the way up to San Francisco and back and around. And one of our stops was here in Paso, which was a lot of fun. And the cars that raced in it were built from 1927 to 1958. Beautiful,
Wow.
beautiful cars. Also another art form in itself. But so that show will be airing this next Thursday, the
So
30th.
we'll all want to watch that. That sounds really, really interesting.
Yeah.
So why don't you follow up and give us, because this discussion, by the way, we're having today, is something that really, when you become whatever in film, we all enter in different ways, kind of haunts you all throughout. Because as I say, I started as a painter at age 4, and I painted 1,000 paintings by then. And I was very lucky, very young, to get a contract for Warner Design. Boom, started out as an actor. And my orientation was, an artist. But nobody ever called me, starting from that day on, oh, the artist. But when I was 4, there was a note sent to my parents and said, this boy is an artist, you should take it very seriously. So I considered myself an artist at age 4, and I never left. But when I got a contract and began to work as an actor in really the beginning of the whole series, that's, the beginning of Sunset Strip and all of that, no one ever said I was an artist at all. The term of it. If I told someone in the comments, hey, I'm an artist, they would have all shot me. So there was something really missing. And then later on, I did a lot of scripts. Oh, I'm going to make one, you're going to have, but I want to make one other analogy why, because this is important, we're taking different points of view, why I don't think it's an art form. And I want to make this, because I've written some major films. And in every single script I've written, which I could spend maybe a whole year writing, like a painting, you spend in every single word you worry about and you change. And then you turn this wonderful document in. And if I make the analogy like a painting, if I spend a year and then I turn my painting in, and I'm going to introduce Giuseppe in a minute, who's the instigator for Next Door. Giuseppe, and I come back a week later and I see, what the hell's going on with my painting? That used to be a blue sky and it's pink. Well, I didn't quite like the blue, I want to change it. And then I had my nephew in here, and he thought that this didn't look so good, so we're going to change it. That's exactly what happens in film. Because every damn script I turned in, they just say, oh, great, we'll just change it. We'll change it. So they get to change it as that doesn't suggest an art form to me, okay? Anyway, Kathy, go ahead.
That's an interesting concept.
Yeah.
It is a decision by committee quite often
Yeah.
in some of these things, such as movie making or show making or whatever it is. However, I do think it is an art form.
Okay, great.
And I think it's today's way of expressing your inner ways of another way of expressing what's inside you. Whether, it's painting, or whether it's through music, or whether it's through whatever you do to make a living, to make a way to express yourself. That's an art form.
But are you expressing?
It's our God-given
Are you expressing
way
yourself?
to express
someone
yourself.
have to give
Exactly.
when you, as an actor, you've been assigned a bunch of things that somebody wrote, and you've got to
But you have to interpret
regurgitate
it.
them.
But you have to interpret
Well,
that.
the interpretation it's not really an interpretation because it's a skill, and your job as an actor is to make this real to you. It's not really an interpretation as much it is to bring that reality to these words on a paper, and the more reality you can bring.
But the combination of your acting and the director's skill in getting that performance out of you, as well as the music that
That's
gets
what I call
composed,
a craft. I call that a craft. you
for
see, yeah.
all of that comes together to create an art form. So there's a lot of components that go into it to
This
create
is good,
the art
though.
form.
This is the dialogue. We're each having a...
Right.
But let me introduce that. We're going to come back, because you made an excellent point. That's a great point. And this is the beautiful Madeline Vale, who has this beautiful gallery, beautiful paintings. And what's will be interesting is we're going to get now a point of view, because there's no question when somebody walks in the door with a painting, and if they're good paintings, you call them an artist. You don't have to think of anything else. So why don't you, and Madeline, by the way, has a double, you've been in, she's done some acting, I know a bunch of it, and starred in some films. So she's a good person to give us some insight into this.
My answer is, it depends.
Good answer.
I think fine art versus art form. I think artist versus craftsman, they're different things.
Mhm.
So I think a filmmaker can be an artist. I think a filmmaker also can be a company man.
Mhm.
Completely, the product is completely different. And I think it changed. I don't think when the guys came running over to California to get away from Kodak, they really cared about making art. I think they cared about making money.
Mhm.
And it was a product. Came from the Nickelodeons.
Mhm.
Was it art? It was entertainment. And that's when you also have a fine line between entertainment and what's commercial and what is fine art. And to me, we can go deeper into this, but fine art is about intention, and then it's about the finesse in which it's accomplished and the communication.
And I think you make I think that word craft, and we brought it up, and to me it's, I was looking at the artwork, I was looking at the frame, I look a little bit sometimes the film artist as the frame maker. It's still, you can call him an artist, but he's making the frame surrounding a work of art.
And that's when you get into director as auteur.
Yeah, and they're great and wonderful framers. But somehow, it's not fine art, it's just a great craft, and some are great at it. And that's where I make, again, advance that point in film. Up to this time, we're going to get back to your point. Up to this time, difficult for me to call it an art form. I'm going to introduce you to this gentleman over here. And his name, it used to be Gary Conway's name, but he changed it. Because he looked up, he realized it was already one
It's
after
already taken.
So he changed it to a really interesting name. His name is Giuseppe Bellissimo, okay?
Not too
I
Italian.
grew up in an Italian family, and I would have loved to have had that name.
Really?
And Bellissimo means the most beautiful. And
It's an art name.
Huh?
It's an art name.
It's an art name. And I've asked Giuseppe, how did you grow up in Italy? You know, it would be like growing up here and your name is Bill Beautiful.
A lot of cheese.
So and besides, which is really interesting, he was an army brat. We don't think of such a thing as the Italian army brat, right? And where do some of the like instead of here when you're an army brat, you end up in Oklahoma or down there in some godforsaken place or way out here in Fort Ord. Where are some of the bases you had?
Well, my dad was in the Air Force. He was based outside Milano, outside Rome, Syracuse, Sicily.
Poor guy.
Really?
Near Venice. So we kind of moved around a little bit.
That's nice.
Yeah, so those are the they were the suffering.
their
bases. Like us, you shipped in godforsaken place. I spent enough time up in Fort Ord to tell you it's not Milan. It's not Rome. It's a whole different world. So Giuseppe has a great background. Again, he and Jeff organized and began this incredible gallery next door. And what's fascinating about this, and that's why I think this is all in the lap of the gods now, because they all drive from Los Angeles, as most of us have. They independently, on their own, decided they would open an extraordinary gallery, not just a gallery, here. And for God's sakes, they both ended up next door. And if you didn't, we couldn't have this
crazy.
event. So thank you. Anyway, Giuseppe, take it away for your point of view, coming from
The
this.
miniature gallery in Paso Robles. Well, movies can be art form when there's the cooperation of great set designer, great costume designer, and great visual artist. It's only when the movies are all digitized and special effect that I don't consider that an art form. But when there is the physical help of fine craftsman and fine set designer and costume designer and all these amazing artists slash craftsmen, then it becomes
Yeah.
an art form. So the movie can be art
Yeah, and
form
I think-
and non-art
And that's
form.
where a movie.
I disagree. I
Yeah, I do
totally,
too.
I
But
totally,
let me just.
I totally disagree,
I want you
though.
guys to rebuttal that, but I just want to throw it, that's where the film form, to me, corresponds a bit to the opera. The opera, because the opera you have to have all these elements to be an opera.
It's just a different paintbrush. That's all it is. It's an electronic paintbrush versus a real paintbrush.
Oh, in regards to
In
digital.
regards to
In regards to
digital.
I knew that was
And
gonna
that's,
make
and
some
that's what
people-
today is, that's what the artists use today, is a digital
But
format.
when you go to a movie, you can tell the difference when it's digitized and when it's done by hand. There's a fine line, you can kind of tell.
But that's cell versus versus a digital
Well,
format. That's-
Take Toy
It's
Story.
just a technique.
Okay, Toy Story was a monumental break. It was probably, I think by 1923, every technology that needed to be done for motion picture was invented.
Was done, yeah.
Toy Story was the first invention beyond that. Now, Toy Story grabs you. It talks to your heart. It does everything that art does. The fact is that it is entirely digital. It's just a different paintbrush.
And believe me, when you work with those artists that are on those machines, they're artists.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Because they're making decisions
Exactly.
constantly.
They're making those
What would
machines
happen
work.
if he had big muscles, and what
Yeah.
would happen if this happened? It's all a true
Mm-hmm.
art. And the fact is that, okay, so they do it for money? Well, I don't know many artists that
Don't do it.
want to give away their
I don't
painting.
do it for money.
Yeah.
You don't, huh?
Do I? I don't know, I forget. Oh, yeah. She'll get me straight on that. She'll get me straight on that one. But Giuseppe brings up a point, and I think we can't forget it. Because great art never really changes. And I think about this every day. And also, have you all seen a film? And if you haven't, you should, called Bicycle Thief. And by the way, you should show it in your theater. To me, Bicycle Thief was the greatest film
fantastic.
ever made.
Yeah.
It still is.
Truly.
And it was made right after the war by De Sica, who had no equipment. There were no actors. He had nothing. But he made this masterpiece. And I think part of a great art is that it really never changes. And I can tell you that from an experience as an artist. I spend a lot of my day in front of a computer, and I'm pretty good at all of these programs. I do all this stuff. And I'll be doing, Photoshop and Illustrator, and I'll be doing things and all over the place. And my God, look at this. Isn't it incredible? This digital world, how fabulous. Then it occurs to me, I got to finish that painting I started. So I leave that spot. I walk over to my gallery in the studio. And I go there and I, pick up my brush, I get my paints, there's the canvas, and I'm doing it exactly like somebody did in the 1600s, 1500s. It has never changed. And the challenge of great art has never changed. I mean, any of these paintings, the same process. Here's an artist lounging against the wall. That's part of the order of here. And I know as a painter, I mean, it has not changed since the earliest of time. And I also play the violin. And I can tell you that there is no computer program, nothing, no smart program that's going to make me play any better than Paganini, Locatelli, Vivaldi, who could play 1,000 times better than I can in the 1600s, the 1700s, and 1800s. There's nothing, you're a sculptor, you're a writer, you're a poet, nothing, it's this, art is art. And that's what worries me about film. Because if it's dependent on, so this is my counter-argument to you, if it's dependent on these new things.
It doesn't
But
have to have
rebuttal,
new things.
rebuttal.
It absolutely does not have to have the new
The
things.
Bicycle Thief, Vittorio De Sica, post-World War II. The only reason that he could make that movie was because of the German cameras that were all portable, that you could handheld, you could bring those cameras out into the location. You could be unobtrusive. You could hide a motion picture camera somewhere because of this new technology that the Germans had invented. It was technology that opened up a whole new form where you could use non-actors even
Which he
in
did.
that film.
Which he did, yeah.
Tons of
Really?
non-actors because of the German cameras,
Yeah.
because of that technological breakthrough. So it really is, you have to say, well, did Vittorio De Sica make that movie for money? Well,
But the point of
he
bringing
made that movie to
But the
express
point-
the misery of post-World War II Italy and Italian neorealism. That's why he made
Right,
that
but
movie.
the point of bringing that up is if I go to the theater here and see a good copy, projected, not on the TV, which is unfortunate, and I see that and the emotions I feel and the sense of that time, the moment, can I get any better than that? Will I ever get a better feeling at the moment if I go even to the most dramatically incredible
Yeah.
computer-driven thing? I mean, that, again, with music, what can you do with a computer that will ever be better than Mozart? It'll never happen. So in a way, what we've lost, I believe, this is my argument, we've lost with all of these 3D and 10D and every other damn thing that always goes down the tube, is we have forgot here that, yes, film can be an art form. And one thing about an art form, it should stir you, it should make you think.
It's still
it
the
should do all
story.
that.
Talk to your
It's
heart.
still,
Yeah, talk to your heart.
exactly.
Good.
That's what it is. That's the bottom line. And if it doesn't matter what the format is, whether you use acrylic or if you use oil or if you use multimedia or if you use whatever, I don't think it really matters as long as whatever it is that's created is something that actually does move you
Right.
in some way.
I-
So,
There's two things that I see that from two opposing views. One, I think you're getting caught up in, well, not you, I shouldn't say that. Just because a medium hasn't been developed yet, to make a definition without knowing what's coming and to call, that can't be art because it didn't exist before.
No, yeah, I
And then,
agree with you on that.
okay, and then the other point, to just say that something is an art form because of a camera that somebody was able to bring in from some, or what are the mechanisms of it, to say that film is art, it's black and white, isn't fair either, or correct. In my opinion, fine art, is from the human spirit, and it's the artist who is the creator of the art. So I think if you have a collaboration of several talented artists, they're all artists, in heart, in soul, in spirit. It doesn't really matter what your medium is. You can create, whereas maybe a designer, a costume designer, it's not fine art. Actually, though, the Met would beg to differ with their huge costume gala, right? Those are sculptures. When you have all these artists come together and they create one thing, that is fine art. They have collaborated and created this thing of beauty.
but a vision started in somebody's head.
But it's
the
all,
same
it
thing.
has to
Right.
be, and if you have one artist and nobody else is cooperating, and Mr. Producer comes in and says, screw that costs too much money, and I want you to bring a pink pig into the thing because that's popular. Now it's not art, and you've ruined it, right? So that's what I'm...
Madeline, that's a great
But
point.
remember-
And the other...
Remember the movie Portrait of a Woman?
Yes.
Based on Jane Austen?
Yes.
novel? It was set in Florence, and it was all about the beauty of the architecture, the costumes, the set design. That was true art. And if you recreate that with the computer, to me, it cheapens what the true art is or what the true product
You're back
is.
to
Do you know what I mean?
Italian. You're back
No,
on the
not just
computer.
that. But I'm just saying, you can tell the difference when there is a human artist behind building stuff and,
Let me throw one other angle into this, okay?